White House is warning they expect Iran-backed Houthi rebels to retaliate against the U.S. and U.K. that led dozens of strikes on the group in Yemen. A Houthi spokesperson said the strikes weren't going to deter them. For more, let's bring in Bilal Saab. He's a senior fellow and founding director of the Defense and Security Program at the Middle East Institute. So let's drill down on these anti-ship ballistic missiles that were used by the Houthis and may have been the catalyst for the U.S. strikes. What are their capabilities?
So it's good to be with you. And look, I think that we know that the Houthis have used a combination of weapons here, as you said yourself, including anti-ship ballistic missiles, anti-ship cruise missiles, and also drones to support with intelligence. What we're not clear about is what exactly did they use, and the pretty significant arsenal that they have, most of which has been provided by the Iranians. We're not exactly clear which specific weapon they actually used. We have our own assumptions. We could do what we call in the U.S. military post-damage assessment, but at least in open source information, we're not exactly clear what specific missiles they've used. And in terms of capabilities, whenever you look at those, obviously you look at a bunch of things, including precision, lethality, and range. They appear to have all three of those in their arsenal right now, which is bad news.
Okay, so let's drill down a little further on that. What nations are really in the best position to provide this kind of weaponry to the Houthis?
The most likely candidate, Catherine, is Iran, because if you make a pretty simple comparison of the arsenal that the Houthis have and what the Iranians have, it's almost practically identical. Then you've got, of course, the North Koreans with the Nodong ballistic missiles that they have, and, of course, the Chinese. Specifically with the Chinese, we're talking about cruise missiles, especially the C-801s, C-802s, which, by the way, we saw in action in 2006, if you recall, when Hezbollah launched an anti-ship missile against an Israeli vessel off the coast of Lebanon. A lot of this, mind you, is old Soviet technology, but over the years, they've actually had the opportunity to develop them and come up with better versions of that old Soviet technology.
So what I'm hearing you say is that increasingly they've got better weapons with increased precision. So is that the red line that was crossed that led to the launch of these strikes?
Yes, and every time you're talking about ballistic missiles, obviously you're talking about heavy payloads, which means in simple terms, more destructive power. So I think you're exactly right. That was pretty much the catalyst as far as U.S. and Western intervention.
So the Houthis are saying that they're going to retaliate for these strikes. What could that look like, and how successful do you think the attack was by the U.S. and the U.K.?
Great set of questions. Let's start with the first one. So I would suspect, I don't think it's a wrong assumption here, that you will probably see an increased rate of attacks and growing sophistication, lethality, and precision against commercial shipping and perhaps even military ships that the United States owns and its Western allies. We could be surprised by precisely how they use those weapons. It's one thing to own weapons, but it's another altogether to know precisely how to use them. So there's a combination of tactics and procedures that they might have learned from the Iranians. So we could be sadly surprised by how actually they would use them, and they could be much more effective than we've done thus far. In terms of effectiveness, how effective have the U.S.-UK strikes been? Once again, all we can do is rely on the statements of Western officials, including the British and the Americans. They say that they have been successful in degrading the capabilities of the Houthis. Once again, we need to wait for some kind of a post-battle damage assessment. We're probably not going to get the entirety of that in open source. But at least, looking at the targets that the coalition has hit, which would include radar systems, weapons depots, launching sites, those are significant targets.
Bilal Saab, thank you for your analysis.
Oh, it's a pleasure.